what brings us together today. Hi friends, today I am going to be talking about The Princess Bride. I loved this book so much. I cannot wait to talk about it with you. Let's jump in. Now, I want to preface this by saying I am going to try to be non-spoilery in the beginning, and then we're going to jump into this a little bit more, but I grew up in the 90s. I am a 90s kid. I loved the movie The Princess Bride. It wasn't one that I came across until I think I was about 12 or 13. My aunt sent me down and was like, we're gonna watch my favorite movie. It's probably gonna become your favorite movie too. It didn't become my favorite movie, but it was definitely in my top tier of movies. I absolutely loved it. I quote it all the time. My husband, even though it's not one of his favorites, he just has to endure it. Princess Bride takes place in the magical kingdom. It's not a magical kingdom in reality. I like to think of it as a magical kingdom because the story is so magical, but it takes place in a kingdom called Florin. We have our main character, a girl named Buttercup, and her romantic love interest, a man or boy named Wesley. Buttercup in the book is said to be the most beautiful girl in the world, but she is not the brightest girl in the world, but Wesley loves her and she loves him, and you think it's going to be this story about true love, but wait, it becomes a story about adventure, pirates, so much stuff. It's just, it's so good. It's glorious. Now, I know that this book is written by William Goldman. William Goldman is a genius. I want to say this. I needed to look back at his name because I wasn't sure if it was Goodman or Goldman. And he also wrote the screenplay for the movie, and that I think is why it is probably a perfect adaptation if ever there was one. This is it. It's fabulous. Perfection. I'll start talking about spoilers here because it definitely affected the way that I read the book and now view the author as a whole. So we're going to start talking about spoilers in 3, 2, 1. We look back at this cover. I'm sorry, my light is giving it a glare here. The Princess Bride, S. Morgenstern's classic tale of true love and high adventure, William Goldman. When you open this book and you start reading it, it doesn't immediately start in the way that the movie does. If you see in the movie, it starts with Fred Savage as this little boy who's sick at home, whose grandfather comes to read him this book, The Princess Bride. In our book here, at least in my edition, which I believe is the 30th or 35th anniversary edition, we get a recounting story by Goldman. Goldman is telling us about his lawsuit with the Morgenstern estate in order to get the rights for Princess Bride and everything else. When the story starts going, the story itself is how Goldman as a child was read The Princess Bride by his father, who loved this book. And it became his favorite book growing up, so much so that he wanted to share this experience with his son. When his son is 11 years old, he wants to get The Princess Bride for him, but comes to find that it has been out of publication for a really long time. Goldman, being in publishing and in Hollywood producing, is able to narrow down where he can find a copy, gets a copy, and has it delivered to his son, who hates it. He is devastated by this news, and when he asks his son why he didn't like it, his son says, it's just boring. And he says, how could it be boring? There's love, adventure, romance, danger, pirates, all of these amazing things. How could you find this boring? And the son goes, because it's so boring. And he picks up the book and he goes, well, this isn't the book that my father read me as a child. My father cut out all the boring bits. I know what I'll do. I'll make an abridged version of The Princess Bride that everyone can enjoy the same way that I enjoyed this story as a child. He then goes into telling you about how he came about writing the abridged version of the story, and we get going with The Princess Bride. This is all fabricated, which I thought was brilliant. And if you don't know this, you might be sitting there thinking that this person, S. Morgenstern, did actually exist and wrote a copy of The Princess Bride, the original copy of The Princess Bride, but in reality, no, he did not. He never existed. This is all a tale that has been created by Goldman, and it adds so much humor to the book that it's just so funny, because as you're reading the story, he will interject himself into the story similarly the way that the grandson and the grandfather would speak, and it would cut from in the film. And I just loved this. I loved it so much. Goldman uses humor in such a brilliant way in this book that I found it was one of those stories that could be appealing for a wide range of audiences, but I really do feel like this was geared more towards adults appreciating just the humor that he was able to add to this story. It just made it such a memorable reading experience that I can't wait to read this with my daughter when she's older. I'm so excited to read it. But let's jump into the story. The Princess Bride as a whole has our characters, Buttercup and Wesley. We see how it is they come to fall in love, but Wesley decides he needs to go to America to make his wealth and set sail for America. Not long after, word is brought back to Buttercup that he has been killed by the dread pirate Roberts, who has been pirateering for quite some time, and Buttercup declares that she will never love again. But Buttercup is the most beautiful woman of Florin, and therefore draws the eye and attention of the prince, aka Prince Humperdinck, who has to be married and doesn't have a great track record of prospective marriage proposals prior to this. Humperdinck's character is one that is a lover of violence and hunting and is not charming. That's basically the crux of his character, but he decides that he and Buttercup can have a loveless marriage and he will be settled for when his aging and ailing father finally dies and he can become king. We then jump ahead in time, I think by about 5 years, where Buttercup and Humperdinck are about to be married, but Buttercup is kidnapped by the Sicilian and Fezzik and Inigo. And if you are familiar with these characters, it is because, yes, these are the exact same characters from the movie. We have Inconceivable, the Sicilian, who is Wallace Shawn, and we have our lovely giant Fezzik, and we have, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Inigo, which kidnap Buttercup because they are supposed to kill her. They then encounter the man in black who is chasing after them. Each of them has to have a battle, per se, against the man in black. Inigo's is a battle of fencing. He is a master fencer. Fezzik's is a battle of strength. And then the Sicilian is a battle of wits. The man in black is able to overcome each of these, and he then kidnaps Buttercup for himself. We realize very quickly that this is no stranger to Buttercup. It is Wesley, and the way that she recognizes him is because for years and years, all he would say to her before they declared that they were in love with each other was, "As you wish." He tumbles down a hill, and as he's tumbling, he says, "As you wish." Buttercup realizes this is him. They then begin their journey through this place called the Fire Swamp. It's this really fun story. Humperdinck is trying to track her down and trace her, and he gets Buttercup back. Wesley ends up being brought to this torture chamber in something called the Zoo of Death. This is a difference between the book and the movie. In the movie, it is not called the Zoo of Death, but in the book, Humperdinck creates something called the Zoo of Death because each layer, or each floor, excuse me, there are 5, has different threatening animals that he can hunt because, as I said, he loves nothing more than hunting. The characters are very similar from the book and the movie. We have the albino, we have Miracle Max, we have the 6-fingered man that Inigo is hunting because he needs to avenge his father. All of these characters play a very similar role. Wesley is about to be tortured by something called the Machine. It is something that is to test pain. The 6-fingered man, aka Count Rugen, who is affiliated with the prince, is testing it out. He ends up, not him, but Humperdinck kills Wesley. But don't worry, he's not dead. He's just mostly dead. Let's backtrack just a little bit here. The Machine. The Machine is this contraption that Count Rugen has been working on for many, many years, and he was testing it on animals, but now he is going to use Wesley as his test subject. While this machine inflicts immense pain, it sucks years out of you and life. He's not planning on killing Wesley. He plans on torturing him and continually testing it on him until he eventually does die. But Humperdinck gets mad one day, comes in, and in the book, kills Wesley in front of Buttercup, which is a pretty big difference than in the movie. It's fine. It's fine because he's not fully dead. He's just mostly dead. So and Fezzik end up finding the man in black because they need a leader, and they feel he is probably the one that can help guide them best. They find that he is mostly dead. They find their miracle man. A miracle man is someone, as you figured, that can perform miracles. And Miracle Max decides that, yes, he will help them because he hates Prince Humperdinck and the king, and he wants to ruin Humperdinck's wedding. He is able to bring Wesley back to life, and the three of them make their way to the palace to interrupt the wedding, which they don't, but events happen afterwards, which make it very fun. In the end, we see our showdown between Count Rugen, the six-fingered man, and Inigo. We have a speech of To the Pain with Wesley and Prince Humperdinck, and we have them living, we think, happily ever after. In this book, however, it's not the end of the story because Goldman has more to say at the end, where he talks about writing a sequel called Buttercup's Baby. He creates this whole new narrative about the legalities of trying to create a sequel with the estate of S. Morgenstern, and it's hysterical and funny, and I don't want to just tell you everything because I do think it's something that you should read and enjoy for yourself. This book is a 5 out of 5 for me. I loved it. It was such a fun read. I honestly encourage everyone to read it. Anyone that has ever liked the film The Princess Bride, please go and read this book. You will not be disappointed. If anything, I think you'll just love the movie even more. If you would like to help support me, you can hit like and subscribe, and you can tell me in the comments below if you've read The Princess Bride. If you did you fall for the Morgenstern thing? I did not. I thought it was very funny, but I saw through it pretty quickly. I do appreciate, though, how legitimate it does come across. I think it just added so much flavor to the story that I really, really enjoyed. If you'd like to come chat with me about it on Instagram as well, you can find me at Fantasy Awash, and as always, I will see you next time.